I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people are feeling, but no one has really been able to put their finger on it completely. And let's just put it this way, is it just me? Or does it feel like something is just off about this year, 2025? Because if you've been paying attention to the news, it's just hard to shake this feeling that there's something going on beneath the surface. Because when you look at a lot of the major events that have happened this year, everything that's going on in the world, a lot of the stories and narratives just don't make sense. They don't add up. The dots just don't connect. And the worst part is that every time we try to look into it more or ask deeper questions, the official narrative that they feed us is always vague, contradictory, or just dismissive. And in this video, I want to do something very simple. Just go over 3 examples of that. 3 major world events that just haven't felt right. Like I said, almost as if there's something deeper going on that they're not telling us about. Almost like it's some kind of psychological manipulation or whatever you want to call it. Each one of these events that I'm going to talk about is strange enough in itself. And I feel like all of this just paints a picture of a society that's being messed with, being tested almost, or possibly even conditioned for something bigger that's gonna come in the next few years. I don't... Shit, I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but you'll see what I mean. The New Jersey drone mystery. Now, I'm not sure how many of you guys might have heard about this, especially people who don't live in America. But at least for me, it was something I followed pretty carefully because I used to live in New Jersey. But basically, back in late 2024, like November, December, and even into early 2025, there were just reports flooding in about these massive swarms of drones flying over parts of northern New Jersey at night. Not just 1 or 2 drones, like hundreds of them, literally. There were videos of it all over the internet, on Twitter, on TikTok, and a lot of them seemed to be moving in strange coordinated patterns too. Not just over random areas either. They were moving over highly populated residential areas. If you didn't know, New Jersey is the most densely populated state in America. And they were also flying over military bases. And these weren't just harmless incidents either. It's not like nothing ever happens. For example, there was an instance of a medical helicopter that literally had to delay its landing because a lot of these drones got in the way. And at one point, the FAA took it so seriously that they issued temporary flight restrictions on airplanes and said that no one could fly drones in the area. That's not something the government would do if it was just not a big deal, if it was just a coincidence. And in spite of all this, we never ever got a straight answer on this issue. Because after a while, the news literally just stopped covering it, and federal officials dismissed it as, oh, these sightings are just misidentifications of airplanes, and there's just an air of mass hysteria, and people are being paranoid. That's what they told us. That was the official narrative that they eventually went with, after weeks and even months of scrutiny. They literally just told us, yo, there's nothing to worry about, bro, and gave no further explanation whatsoever. And us being the distracted population that we are, we just forgot about it collectively. No one kept pressuring the government. The story faded out of the news cycle and was replaced by other more attention-grabbing stories. And it was like the government and the media just artificially made this issue go away. And people went along with it. No one kept asking questions. No one kept pressing. And eventually the drones went away too, but still, it makes you wonder. There had to have been something off about the original story. There's really no other way around it if you think about it. We live in the most surveilled country on Earth. New Jersey, again, is the most densely populated state in the country. Every license plate, every phone, every street corner is tracked to one degree or another. There's radar everywhere, multiple airports in the area, like I said, military bases, but somehow they can't figure out what was causing a mass coordinated drone swarm for weeks on end over this kind of area. Is it scarier to think that it was a mystery and they genuinely didn't know? Or that they knew exactly what was going on but didn't want to tell us for fear of some kind of repercussions on a large scale? That's the question that we should all be asking. But when you ask these kinds of questions, like I said, they gaslight you into thinking that you're the problem, that you're paranoid, that it's just mass hysteria and people are just misidentifying things. Yeah, you guys, the peasants, you don't know better. Again, that doesn't add up. Either the government doesn't know who was responsible, or they know who it was and just won't tell us. And again, I'm not sure which one is scarier. And if it was, for example, the government themselves, which is a likely possibility, The question is why. I'm curious, what do you think they were doing? Were these drills that they didn't want to tell the public about? Were they looking for something? Like I remember seeing theories about some kind of nuclear fallout. Was it a stress test to see how people react to this kind of situation? Or are they just trying to prepare us, trying to get us used to it, trying to condition us for something bigger that's coming? I'll be the first to admit that I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. I'm sure there are people smarter than me who have better theories, but I think the very least we can do is ask questions about it. Because, like I said, I know it can't be just me that has a gut feeling that something is off. Not just about the drones, but about the possibility that something might be moving in the shadows, and we're not being told the truth about it. Because anyone who has really studied history and knows about the history of clandestine operations that have to some extent or another involved the public, you'll also know that this isn't outside of the realm of possibility. Then there's Israel and Iran. I guess I'll tell a quick personal story about it. I was actually on a backpacking trip when it happened. I was out in the eastern Sierras of California, and I just remember after I came back from my long overnight trip in the mountains, which you can see on my second channel actually, the first thing I saw when I got back into my car, had cell service, and looked at my phone was that Israel attacked Iran. But again, if you've followed this event as much as I did, you might also get the feeling that something is off and the story of it is not over, not by a long stretch. But basically a recap of it, you remember that headlines made it seem like World War III was about to happen. Even I thought it could be the brink of something big. Social media was on fire. You couldn't scroll through Instagram reels without seeing rockets flying through the sky and edits of the Ayatollah. But even the credible analysts on the mainstream media were saying that this is definitively the most dangerous moment in the Middle East in years, decades even. And then just as quickly one day, at the single tweet of Trump, it was over, somehow. Missiles flying, critical infrastructure being disrupted, global supply chains threatened, thousands of people suffering, and then just poof, it was gone. Nothing to see here anymore. It all somehow settled down between these two countries that have been at each other's throats for years on end. But when you look a little bit deeper, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, logically. And I'll give you probably the simplest way to think about it. If you know the history, Israel has spent decades preparing for a war with Iran. They planned this attack years in advance. That's how they were able to launch the preemptive strikes from within Iran's borders. And they openly call Iran an existential threat. They've been doing it since, like I said, decades ago. The point is that this was a massive undertaking. In fact, the whole name of the operation was called Rising Lion. If you don't know, that's actually a reference to the previous flag of Iran before the current administration, the previous regime, indicating that their end goal of this operation is regime change. And now, we're somehow all supposed to believe that they decided to stop for good without achieving any of their strategic objectives. All they really did was like poke the beehive, essentially. Provoke a massive country, inflame the region, and then get nothing out of it without actually removing the threat. Again, we're supposed to believe that they launched this war, which has been decades in the making, and Israel was actually winning by most accounts. That they just decided to stop it, not finish the job, not achieve any of their strategic objectives, and call it quits. The leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, is still there. The Revolutionary Guard is still there. The nuclear program, by most reports, is still mostly intact. If anything, they could have even strengthened the public sentiment around the regime and rallied people in favor of their government. So, none of the strategic objectives that Israel has been obsessed with for years were achieved. So logically, does it make sense that they just supposedly stopped for good? Does it make sense that Israel, after risking so much to start this and planning this so far ahead in advance, just walked away with nothing to show for it? Or does it make more sense that this was not the end? That this is actually a start, possibly setting the stage for something even bigger? Because historically, these conflicts in the Middle East, they don't just disappear. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, you know the whole deal. You know how long we've been there. Because every time we say a war in that region is over, it never truly is. It just mutates into something else. And for some strange reason, it just so happens to always be against one of Israel's enemies. And we just so happen to get involved. So I don't think I'm the only one who feels like the Israel-Iran conflict isn't over yet. There was no conclusion, only at most an intermission. These Middle East conflicts, they drag on forever. They always drag on forever. But this time, it feels a little bit different, doesn't it? Because it truly is riskier than ever before. It involves two major nations that either have or are developing nuclear weapons, including one of them that has openly threatened to use them in a previous conflict. And even if you pay attention to our own domestic politics, you can see the signs that something is brewing. New bills constantly being introduced, some of them to send more foreign aid and weapons to them, some of them to ban any criticism of that country, and even literally mass government visits of American politicians to that country. Of course, we still always have our military bases and ships in the area, and in all this, it seems like the chessboard is still set for something to happen. And that's why everything about this Israel-Iran situation still feels so off, because the way the story was presented doesn't really match reality. The media just largely reports on what's going on as if it's an isolated situation, but when you look at the context of the broader Middle East conflict going back decades, you'll know that this is not the end of the story. And mark my words on this, come back to this video if I happen to be correct or incorrect, but I predict that the conflict between Israel and Iran is going to erupt once again within a year from me saying these words. And then, in much more recent news, the tragedy of what happened to Charlie Kirk. And by the way, if you've noticed in these videos, I say words like tragedy, use euphemisms or softer words because you never know how the algorithms might work. Anyways, on paper, they're trying to make it seem like a clean-cut case, but I feel like on this one, everyone on both sides knows that the details just aren't adding up. And the simplest thing to look at is the motive. The most likely answer, the one that they're giving us, is that it was left-wing radicalism, and that's what a lot of us want to believe, for the sake of just simplicity and understanding. It seems like the most logical explanation on the surface, for sure. But even as someone who finds myself leaning more towards the right nowadays, and is fully aware of the problem of left-wing violence, I mean, they literally come after me and threaten me in every video, I will say that things aren't as obvious as they seem in this instance, and it's reasonable to ask questions about who this individual really was. Obviously, reports surfaced that these casings had different engravings on them, inscriptions, phrases that looked like memes or internet culture references, but there are different interpretations of them, none of which unequivocally point to one political side or another. And the other thing is, when the FBI released the text message transcript, everyone knew that they felt strange and uncanny. People online pointed it out immediately, and I agree. The messages literally read more like a fabricated script than a genuine conversation between one or two crazed individuals. Go ahead, read it for yourself, and I think you'll also come to the same conclusion that it literally feels like it was written specifically for an audience to explain a lot of the missing holes in the investigation. Oh, how convenient is that? Almost too convenient. Then of course there's other circumstantial evidence, reports of strange individuals visiting this person's house. That's all speculation. Some of it might be true, some of it might not. But the strangest thing about all this, and something that I don't think is being talked about nearly enough, is how there was literally a decoy suspect in the crowd. In case you didn't know, someone on the scene, right after this incident happened, immediately started screaming that they were the one who did it. Police took him in, asked him questions, and they found out that it wasn't him. But that bought a lot of time for the perpetrator to get away, almost as if it was planned, because again, this was immediately, almost as if that person had some kind of knowledge in advance that this was going to happen. And then the craziest part is that this individual, his name is George Zinn, has a very long history of being involved in major events like this. This is not his first time around at a major public tragedy, and I've seen posts about how the statistical chance that he is at every single one of these events is almost like 1 in a billion or something. Don't take my word for it though. Look into it, look up his name, search it on Google, ask ChatGPT, do your own research about it, and you'll find a lot of strange things about this person. Anyways, whatever side you're on, whatever you think about the case, I think we can all agree that either the government isn't being transparent, or they genuinely don't know what's going on. And like I said earlier, which would be scarier? I don't know. There's just something about this whole thing that feels off, just like the whole year of 2025 has felt off. This whole year feels like a story of there being more to the story. And then, just for the record, just to cover all the bases of this case, because I know somebody in the comments is gonna bring it up, I see a lot of these theories too. I have to at least mention the whole theory of a certain country being involved. And as much as it does sound like a far-fetched conspiracy theory, I'm not gonna sit here and say I think it's definitely true. I don't think it's unfair to ask some basic questions. For example, is it a coincidence that multiple verified reports say Charlie Kirk was starting to break with a lot of his donors on the issue of this country and started to feel threatened? Is it a coincidence that he started criticizing them more openly in recent months and could possibly be a big threat if he had turned on them as the most prominent conservative commentator in the country? Is it just a coincidence that this happened exactly the day after they launched a huge strike on Qatar, and this event was a pretty convenient distraction from that news? Is it a coincidence that this happened during the very time when there's a huge public backlash about a certain individual who allegedly had ties to that country? Is it also a coincidence that the leader of a foreign government in the middle of a major war, in the middle of attacking like 7 or 8 countries, was somehow one of the first people on the planet to break the news about a domestic American issue? Is it a coincidence that 250 US politicians visited that country just a few days later? And even if it might not be true, is it actually crazy to think that a country that's doing what they're doing right now to Gaza and has covered up major events in the past would have the will or the capacity to do this? I don't know. Nobody knows. All the speculation could be completely wrong. But the point is that when the government doesn't do its job at getting to the facts or being transparent about them, it's only natural that these theories will fly. And the fact in and of itself that so many people doubt the official narrative just tells you all you need to know about how our society is nowadays. People just by default assume that they're being lied to, because we've been lied to so many times in the past. Anyways, take these 3 events for example, put them together, and you start to come to the conclusion that we just live in a very low trust society. Every official narrative feels incoherent and incomplete. Every news story comes with major holes and contradictions. Then it all just so happens to fade out of the news cycle before we ever get a chance to get to the bottom of it. Questions are dismissed as conspiracy theories. The public is gaslighted into thinking that we're the crazy ones, and deep down, people can sense that something is off. That's why 2025 just feels so strange. And obviously, this is not the end. We still have some more time to go in 2025, and can't wait to see what happens next, I guess. But just, honestly, this feels like the most consequential year since 2020. As I always say, if you feel that too, you're not the crazy one, you're not alone. It just means that you're paying attention and you're thinking about these things on a deeper level than what Fox or CNN feeds you. And again, this might be totally subjective, but it really does seem to me, it does feel like there's just a sense of constant tension and uneasiness around us, almost like the air before a storm. And if there is a storm, if there are more major world events in the coming months, would anyone even be surprised at this point? And obviously these aren't the only 3 events. Another one I can just think of right off the top of my head is the whole issue with Trump's health and how it seems like they may or may not be covering that up. And here's the reality in all this. I don't have the answers, you don't. But what matters during these times more than ever is just staying level-headed. Don't fall for the easy narratives and trust when your gut tells you that something is off. And don't let anyone gaslight you into thinking that you're the crazy one, because you're not crazy, they're the crazy ones. The people who rule over our society are literally like files, if you know what I mean. That kind of file. They're files and they run the country. They're crazy, you're not. And lastly, here's the positive thing in all this, because there is a positive angle to it. Because the fact that so many of us are even aware of this, the fact that so many people do feel like something is off, it means that we're finally awake as a society. We're not just sleepwalking through life. We're not just sleepwalking through history. Even if we don't understand everything now, we're at least trying to get to the bottom of things. Social media has made it easier to communicate with each other and spread ideas. The internet and AI has made it easier to do our own research and come to our own conclusions instead of listening to what people tell us. And I can feel it, maybe you can too, that the public discourse is in a place where it has never been before. In a good way. I have my own thoughts about that. You can interpret it the way you want though. But yeah, understanding that something is wrong is the first step towards fixing it. And collectively, as a society, this first step is, I think, starting to be realized. And of course, at the same time, I will say that we can't just fall into total paranoia either, thinking that every shadow is a conspiracy theory. Because if we do that, if we say everything is a conspiracy definitively, it'll be kind of like a boy who cried wolf situation, in that when something real comes around, they'll just call us crazy conspiracy theorists. So I will say, be careful on that too. That's why in this video, I'm not saying much definitively on what my theories are. It's up to everyone to decide. But the most important part is asking the questions, even the ones that feel uncomfortable. And I hope this video maybe inspired you to do the same, or at least think about things on a little bit of a deeper level, or maybe you learned something interesting from it. I'm not an expert, but my message overall is just to stay sharp, stay grounded, stay informed, question what you hear, but don't completely lose your grasp on reality either. Trust your instincts, but also check them against evidence as well. You know, it's all about striking that balance. I'm not sure if there's like a good way to end this, like a concluding sentence or whatever. I think I'm just gonna end it here. I think I'm just gonna cut it here. Anyways, as always, thank you so much for watching. Hope you got something valuable out of this video, and if you did, I'd really appreciate if you'd support me over on Patreon or channel memberships. Thank you so much to the people who already do that. Your support on there is really the only thing that keeps this channel going, because I'm not funded by anyone. I don't take sketchy sponsorships. I don't sell you online courses. All the stuff that other influencers do. I'm trying to be someone different in this space, but I can't do it without your help, just honestly. If you'd like to become a Patreon member, there's so much cool extra stuff on there. We have a community chat where we sometimes discuss and debate these topics in my videos, and I drop some behind the scenes updates about the channel. You can also message me one-on-one directly, ask questions, talk about anything, and there's even some bonus content as well. So Patreon's definitely worth it for literally less than a cup of coffee nowadays. Or if you don't want to go through the hassle of going on a different platform and just want to support the channel directly through YouTube, I have channel memberships where you'll have access to the entire archive of videos that I've made private. Also many hours of previous live stream replays. Some of them are kind of cringe and embarrassing, honestly, especially earlier on, but you can watch those. You can see me answer some interesting questions that people ask in the chats. And you'll obviously get that little badge by your name in the comments. Pretty cool as well. And also, on a more lighthearted note, believe it or not, I actually have a life outside of YouTube. I love to do road trips, go hiking, camping, just spend time outdoors, and I have a second channel for that. New national park vlog is going to be coming out soon, so be sure to subscribe to the second channel if you're interested in that. It's a completely different type of content than what's on this channel. So if you ever do need a break from all the talk about politics and society, that's where you can go. But yeah, hope you guys understand the message here.